Since the first season ended, I kind of forgot how awesome The Mandalorian is. Season 2 just solidified everything that I love about this show. It's crazy, man. It's absolutely crazy. Warning, if you have not watched this episode, I'm going to discuss it. There's going to be spoilers in here. I can't avoid them. I want to talk about it. So come back to this video once you watch it. All right? Cool. That cold opening, that opening that sets up basically the entire episode, the quest, the journey that the Mandalorian goes on with the child in this episode, begins with like a kind of a Gamorrean Guard boxing match, I guess, like a UFC cage fight, put on by the dad from Dinosaurs. I don't know why that guy reminds me of the dad from Dinosaurs. Do you guys remember Dinosaurs? I'm the baby, gotta love me. Anyway. That entire opening sequence, good God. This entire interaction from shooting the Gamorrean Guard, trying to control things, from being on the run, Mandalorian hunting him down, stringing him up like an old Western, turning off the light and letting him get eaten. I loved the way this episode, basically this season, kicked off with this little interaction. It was great. It was voiced by Jon Favreau, right? I'm pretty sure. Maybe he was even in the suit. Could have been. Makes sense. Probably. I have no idea. I'm pumped. So the guy says that there's another Mandalorian on Tatooine. This basically sets up the entire episode. Is it me, or has the music gotten... Maybe better is the right word, but it's definitely more present. Throughout the entire episode, I found the music to be more present. There was more of it. It was better. It was different even than the first season. I loved it, man. The song that plays as Mando is flying to Tatooine was so like triumphant, and man, I just loved it. Yeah, the music kicks ass. If you would have told me, 10, 15 years ago that we were getting a Star Wars show, but the music was way different than anything John Williams ever made for Star Wars, I would have been a little iffy, but dude, it just works. It absolutely works. So there's a specific town, I believe it was called Mos Pelgo, something like that. I literally just stopped the episode and started recording. I think it was called Mos Pelgo. Amy Sedaris' character kind of tells Mandalorian where this Mos Pelgo town is. Says it was destroyed, says it doesn't exist anymore. There's a little R5 cameo in there. Simple. One of my favorite shots in the episode, and it comes back later in the episode in a big way, it sets things up, is kind of the montage of Mando going to Mos Pelgo, and during that journey he interacts with some Tuscan Raiders, some sand people, and kind of hunkers down for the night with them, telling stories using the sign language. I loved this moment. I didn't expect it to come back in a huge way later on in the episode. I just thought this little moment, some travelers hunkering down for the night, telling tall tales maybe. I didn't expect it to come back. I loved it as its own little thing, but it definitely sets things up in a big way. And when the Mandalorian reaches Mos Pelgo, this settlement, everybody's standing outside, watching Mando walk by, this out-of-place traveler walking through their streets. In a weird way, like this little village, this little settlement, reminded me of a Star Wars Galaxies player-run guild city. I know I talk about Galaxies a lot on this channel. It's my all-time favorite Star Wars game, but it was weird, man. Like, as I was watching it, all the houses kind of looked similar. It looked like a Star Wars Galaxy player city. If anybody else has played Galaxies and I actually had a guild city on Tatooine, it reminded me of it. Maybe it's just me. But if you played Galaxies and you got that vibe, let me know. Please. I hope I'm not the only one. So Mando goes to a bar in this settlement. If you're looking for information, you go to a bar. You go to a watering hole, you go to a cantina, you go to a saloon, right? He tells the bartender that he's looking for a Mandalorian. Basically, the bartender says, you're looking for the Marshal, right? And then in walks the Marshal. And I loved this moment. It's where the Boba Fett armor is revealed, and it's on Timothy Oliphant. Obviously, just from the build, just from the way he's wearing it, you can tell instantly it's not going to be Boba Fett. This guy is wearing Fett's armor, right? I loved this entire interaction. It was tense. We find out information about Boba Fett's armor. The Marshal bought it off some Jawas, which I love, It's just some shit that some Jawas found in the desert. They're gonna sell it, they're junkers. They don't know the value of it. Maybe they do, but I'd be willing to guess that they don't. I don't know. They certainly don't know the history of it, right? Like we do. The Marshal certainly doesn't know the history of it. I love when the audience puts so much emphasis and love on something, or has so much knowledge of a something that the characters in the story have no idea about. Even the Mandalorian does not know the history of this armor, right? It makes sense. Big galaxy. You're not going to know everything. I just love how those kind of things are set up. We're in the know and the characters have no idea. But that will probably change, right? So we hear like an air raid siren. And it turns out that a krayt dragon has been kind of terrorizing this settlement. We see it basically swimming through the sand right down the middle of Mos Pelgo. The air raid siren goes off. The villagers are used to it. We see them cleaning up after it's gone. It eats a bantha, this giant creature that has been terrorizing the town. And the Marshal proposes something. He says that if Mando helps him kill the krayt dragon, he can have the armor. That's going to be the proposition. We get a flashback in this episode. That's great. It's the second Death Star blowing up. Boom. We're back in the bar. The Marshal's in there before he has the armor. The villagers are, excited. They're watching like a live feed or news footage of the second Death Star exploding. But then a power vacuum is created. The Empire has been removed from the equation, and the mining collective comes in, just eradicates everybody in the bar. The power vacuum has opened, and a power vacuum wants to be filled, right? This is exactly what would happen if there was a real empire across a spanning galaxy, right? The Empire would go down. Everything would not be hunky-dory. Everything would not be peace and love. The power vacuum would open, and it would be filled with dastardly folks for sure, right? And the mining collective is what fills that power vacuum here in Mos Pelgo. The Marshal says that Mos Pelgo became a slave camp, basically. Hey, look, it's the ice cream maker, Willrow Hood. As the Marshal is escaping from this mining collective massacre, he takes the Willrow Hood ice cream maker that has a ton of crystals inside of it. Walking through the desert, Jawas save his life. He ends up trading the crystals for the Mando armor that the Jawas have. And he walks back to Mos Pelgo, kills the entire mining collective, retakes the town, the savior of Mos Pelgo. The little flashback is great, man. It's great. It's a really fun origin story for this armor, once again, that we put so much emphasis on, right? And it just ends up being a thing that the Marshal finds and trades for, and ends up helping him out massively in the town as well. But what's next? The final, 30 minutes of the episode is, it introduces Tuscan Raiders. And I don't know why, man, but when Tuscan Raiders run, it's funny and I love it. And I kind of want to make a 501st approved Tuscan Raider costume. I don't know why. I want to. So the Tuscan Raiders and the villagers, after some negotiating, after some convincing by Mando, they all decide to team up. They all decide to work together. They're going to attempt to kill the krayt dragon together, because the krayt dragon has caused chaos for the Tuscan Raiders, for the Sand People. It's caused chaos for the villagers of Mos Pelgo as well. These two factions have never gotten along, but they can find common ground in eradicating this krayt dragon problem. There's so many fun little details in this episode that I love. Kind of explanations for things. The Tuscan Raiders have studied the digestion of the krayt dragon. They've basically attempted to keep it full. They've timed things. They've realized that when it's full, when it has a full belly, it sleeps longer. It doesn't terrorize as much. They put out banthas in order to satiate it. They come to this abandoned sarlacc pit where the krayt dragon lives, and basically offer up banthas and offer up food in order for, at least in hopes of, the krayt dragon not messing with them, right? It doesn't work this time. It ends up eating the Tuscan. I love it. So yeah, an all for one for all mentality here. Mando gives the villagers a pep talk. There's going to be a peace between these rival factions, the Tuscan Raiders, the Sand People, and the villagers of Mos Pelgo, if they work together, if they can come together in this huge, unlikely raiding party, right? The plan is to bury explosives in the sand. The krayt dragon's only exposed part, only weak part, is its belly. So they're going to try to get the krayt dragon to go over the explosives and then boom. This is like Moby Dick. This is like when stories of sailors trying to get the big whale. They're shooting harpoons into it. They're trying to weaken it, but this is on sand. It's just like that. They literally have harpoons and stuff like that, trying to pull it, trying to expose it, trying to weaken it. It's like ancient stories in ancient mythology of krakens or giant serpents. I mean, hell, Timothy Oliphant's character, the Marshal, even calls it a leviathan. The entire sequence is so much fun. Once again, I love when Tuscan Raiders run. I love how vicious this entire sequence is. You know, people are lost. The krayt dragon has acid saliva, just burning people alive from up high. The plan goes to hell. The explosives go off too early, it seems. The krayt dragon is fine. Mandalorian and the Marshal fly up to the top of a mountain. Eventually, Mando takes things into his own hands, and he basically turns into Agent J, Will Smith, from the Men in Black. Goes inside of the bug, or the krayt dragon, blows things up from inside, flies out, covered in goo, ultimately okay. One of my favorite things, man, is just the end of the episode where we see everybody kind of cutting up the krayt dragon for meat. Life in the desert is hard. It's very subtle, but I loved it. We even see like Mando with a hunk of krayt dragon meat on the back of his speeder. You know, maybe he's gonna go give it to Amy Sedaris' character. But everybody gets to eat well for a long time, because that krayt dragon is huge. If they're able to preserve that meat, and it was not only a raiding party to eliminate a threat, it was also a hunting party. And these two crews, bonded. Hopefully they get along from now on. But from the beginning of this episode to the very end, I'll discuss this thing in a second. We all know what I'm going to discuss. But from the very beginning of this episode to this point, and even beyond, from the beginning to the end, from the beginning to the credits, I loved it. I loved everything about this episode. I've kind of forgot over the past year, after the final episode of the first season ended, how much fun this damn show is. It's simple, but it's fun. From the music, to the pacing, to the tiny details, to the questing video game nature of it, which I feel like this season is probably going to be very similar, at least the first episode was, to the first season. You know how the first season, people complained about this, but the first season felt like every single episode was kind of its own self-contained thing. Sure, the child and Mandalorian were on the run, but every episode kind of was its own thing, its own quest, its own mission. And at a certain point, this episode kind of turned into like a side quest, right? Let's kill the krayt dragon in order to get Boba Fett's armor. It felt very similar to the way the first season was. And I loved that about the first season. I liked how on the run it felt. I liked how ping-pongy it felt, how herky-jerky it felt, all over the place. No two episode was kind of the same. Everything was its own little quest. And I kind of hope this season keeps that pace up. They're like single individual issues of comic books, you know, that do have a thread to them, but they are very different from one another. Anyway, I love it. So now Mando has Boba Fett's armor, and at the end we see Temuera Morrison, aka the guy who played Jango Fett, aka the guy who played every single clone in the prequel trilogy, aka probably Boba Fett, right? Probably. No question about it in my mind. Tatooine, a big setup with the Boba Fett armor. There's no question in my mind that Temuera Morrison is not playing a clone. He's not playing Rex. He's playing Boba Fett. So there you have it. What do I think about that? You guys know me. I've never been a fan of resurrecting characters, as I put it. The very concept of bringing characters back that we think of as dead is goofy to me. I feel like it's been done so often. Characters rarely stay dead in Star Wars. Obviously they do. There's way more dead characters than not. But the very concept of it has never really sat well with me. But I always will reserve judgment until I see the execution. Palpatine, for example, in The Rise of Skywalker, the very concept of him being back, I never liked it. I always thought it felt goofy, but I waited until the execution, right? And I did not like that execution. Now, Darth Maul, on the other hand, the very concept is goofy to me. Still, I don't like the idea of resurrecting characters. I'm sorry, man. Guy gets cut in half. I get it. We all love these characters. Never really did much for me, the concept of Darth Maul coming back. But again, the execution was brilliant. I loved the execution of bringing Darth Maul back to Star Wars, back alive, resurrecting Darth Maul. Now, we got Boba Fett back. I don't think there's any question in my mind that he's back. And the very concept is a little goofy to me. I'm sorry, I can't get that out of my brain. I know we all love what we love, and I know we all want to see more of what we love, but bringing characters back, I think, will always be a goofy concept to me. And I will always have to see the execution before I even remotely get excited. It's like default position for me is to be like, really? Really? Do we need to bring all these characters constantly back? Can characters sometimes stay dead? That's going to be my knee-jerk default reaction. But reserve judgment until we see the execution. And if the show is our guide, the execution is going to be brilliant, you know? Obviously, we have the folks who brought back Darth Maul in the Clone Wars, so I'm assuming the execution is going to be great here with Boba Fett, you know? We'll have to see. And I do have a feeling, since the nature of this show is to be so, like, episodic, where every episode is very different and doesn't really carry over that many characters, and it feels very isolated in its own thing, I kind of have a feeling that maybe Boba Fett will just appear in one episode. Maybe he'll come back at a certain point, but I feel like it's going to be more subtle than maybe even I'm thinking or I'm hoping, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's my spiel. We'll see. I loved it. I loved this episode. It was great. I love The Mandalorian. This episode just kicked things back into gear for me. Like I said, I forgot how awesome this goddamn show is. I've been looking for posters for my office, and this episode might have sold me on getting a little, like, Mandalorian print, something simple. Yeah, man, I love it. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section below. I can't wait to see where this goes. I don't know if every single episode is going to be 55 minutes long like this one was. I wasn't expecting that. I went to bed at midnight. I woke up at 4:45 to watch this. I'm super tired. I expected like a 25-30 minute episode. But yeah, man, let me know. Let me know what you thought down below. Loved it. Can't wait for next Friday. Have a happy Halloween. Hello, Greedo. Out.